This video is going to tackle the biggest Minecraft problem that most of us face, and this problem is redstone. Though it might not be a problem to many, most of us just don't understand it. If we want to build a redstone contraption, we just go online and copy the works of other YouTubers without even understanding it a bit. But you won't be doing much of that anymore, because I'm gonna explain what you really need to know to understand redstone, which are the basics. And we're gonna start with the most basic of components, redstone dust. Redstone dust essentially carries redstone signals from a power source, and as it does this, it gradually loses signal strength from a signal strength of 15 all the way down to a signal strength of 0. And when it is depleted like this, it can't power anything. When the dust is joined with another piece of redstone dust, it will form a redstone wire or a line. This wire will weakly power all the blocks under it and the blocks it runs into. It will not, however, interact or power blocks or components that are above or beside it. So you might be asking, what is weak powering? Well, when a block or component is weakly powered, you can power redstone components or take outputs from a repeater from it. You don't have enough signal strength to activate redstone dust from it, it being the weakly powered block. When a block is strongly powered, you can actually get a redstone dust signal out of it. The next component is the redstone torch. The redstone torch is a power source which outputs a signal strength of 15, emits a light level of 7, and can be turned off and on. The redstone torch will strongly power the block above it and will power adjacent redstone components and blocks, including above and below, if placed on the side of the block, that is. The torch won't power the block it's placed on though. The redstone lamp can be activated by being powered directly or by a powered adjacent block. The lamp is movable by pistons and is a solid redstone component, which means that when one lamp is powered, all other adjacent lamps will also be powered. The lever is basically a switch which strongly powers the block it's placed on, powers the components adjacent to it and components below it. It gives a constant output of 15 redstone signal strength too. The wooden button strongly powers the block it's placed on, powers the components adjacent to it and above and below it for 15 redstone ticks. You could also shoot an arrow at it to turn it on. The stone button powers blocks and components in the same way but for 10 redstone ticks, and it doesn't work with arrows. The wooden pressure plate will strongly power the block underneath it when a mob or the player stands on top of it. It also powers any component it's adjacent to and above it, and it will deactivate when the mob or player gets off of it. The wooden pressure plate will also work with dropped items, experience orbs, and projectiles. The stone pressure plate powers stuff in the exact same way, unlike the wooden one won't work with dropped items, XP, or projectiles. The iron pressure plate also powers items in the exact same way as the wooden one or the stone one, but gives a signal strength in group of 10 entities. For example, 10 creepers give 1 signal strength, and anything more than 10 will give a signal strength of 2, and this will increase all the way up to a signal strength of 15. The gold pressure plate powers items exactly the same way, but this time it gives a signal strength equal to the number of entities on it. For example, only the player on it gives 1 signal strength, and if I add more entities, the signal strength increases all the way to 15. The redstone repeater is a component that can take outputs from strongly powered blocks and power sources. It will also strongly power the block or component it faces into to a signal strength of 15. It is a very useful redstone component. The redstone repeater basically extends signals. For example, if a signal strength of 1 is being inputted to a repeater, it will extend the signal by outputting a signal of 15. A repeater can be locked by running another powered repeater into it from the side. When locked, the repeater will hold the same state it was in before it was locked and will only change state when unlocked. So therefore, if power is cut off from a locked repeater, it will still give a redstone output of 15, and the opposite is true if power is supplied to a locked repeater which was originally off. The repeater also has tick delay, where it basically delays the signal inputted from being outputted. And yeah, this is what is used in all those massive stairs where one stair comes out before the other. A piston is a redstone component that basically pushes things, and it could also break some things, like torches. The basic piston doesn't put items back. The piston can be powered directly or by powered adjacent blocks, but a piston can't be powered from its face. The pistons push up to 12 blocks in total and are transparent components, and what I mean by transparent is that it doesn't power adjacent pistons or adjacent blocks. And pistons can be pushed themselves. Sticky pistons are powered directly the same way as regular pistons. The only difference between it and a regular piston is that it doesn't only push but also pulls blocks and can only retract one block at a time. An observer is a redstone component which detects block updates on the block it is facing. The observer can even observe blocks placed, broken, pushed, pulled, or powered. It even detects the air since it is actually a block, and it also detects special interactions with blocks like the redstone ore. When an observer observes when an observer observes a block update, it emits a 1-tick pulse from its back, and this 1-tick pulse is in the form of a signal strength of 15. The observer strongly powers the block it faces into. Is a movable block, and as it gets moved, will detect a block update. Wooden doors basically open and close like normal doors. They can be opened by redstone, aren't movable by pistons, and can also be opened by the player, villagers, piglins, and even zombies depending on your difficulty. Iron doors do the same as wooden doors but can't be opened by anything other than redstone. It can't even be opened by the player. Fence gates also open and close but can only be opened by redstone and the player. Nothing else can open it. The fence gates are also movable items themselves. Wooden trapdoors basically work in the same way as the fence gates. Iron trapdoors also work in the same way as fence gates, but just like iron doors, can't be opened by anything but redstone power. TNT is like one of my most beloved blocks. It basically explodes and it's literally the best thing ever. A TNT block will ignite when lit by redstone, fire, flint and steel, and can also be set off by other explosions. When TNT explodes, everything exploded will be dropped, including ores and experience. When TNT is set off in water, it will cause no block damage, and it could also dispense prime TNT. A target block emits a redstone signal whose strength is dependent on where it is hit. For example, if it's hit on the edge, it gives a different signal strength from when it is hit dead on. The target block is activated when any projectile is shot at it, even the trident. A lectern basically holds books. It's also a workstation which emits redstone signal depending on the pages of the book read and the pages of the book itself. When hooked up to a comparator, redstone signals will be pulled out of the lectern, and if you hooked up a 2-page book, on page 2, the signal strength will be stronger than when on page 1. And if it's a 15-page book, the method in which the signal increases will differ, and it will always obey the 16 power level rule. The redstone block is made up of 9 pieces of redstone dust. It's a movable power source which activates redstone components and gives out a signal strength of 15. but it doesn't power adjacent blocks, whether weakly or strongly. Hoppers are very useful components which move items. If you place items or drop items into a hopper facing a block that basically into a storage item, nothing happens. But if you drop an item into a hopper facing a chest or a barrel or hopper, basically a storage block, the item will move to said block. A hopper that has power flowing into it will be locked and shall therefore not allow items to pass through it, even if the hopper is faced into a storage block. A trap chest emits redstone signals when opened and is basically used for, well, traps most of the time. The chest emits a signal strength of 1 and will strongly power the blocks underneath it. The trap chest powers any adjacent redstone components and even components above it. The redstone comparator is an advanced redstone component that compares redstone signals. It also detects items in filled containers. The comparator will continue redstone signals. For example, if a redstone signal of 12 is inputted into the back of a comparator, it will output a signal of 11, 10, and so on. In subtract mode, it will subtract the signals inputted from the back and from the sides. It will stop giving an output if the signal strength being inputted from the sides is stronger than the one being inputted from the back. The redstone signal being outputted by the comparator is proportional to the number of items on the inside of the container. Comparators strongly power the blocks they run into, and they can also take redstone outputs from strongly and weakly powered blocks and power sources. The daylight sensor outputs a signal whose strength is proportional to the time. Daylight sensors activate all redstone components that are adjacent to it and below it. It will also power transparent components that are above it. It doesn't power any surrounding blocks, and it could also be toggled to night mode, so it does what it does during the day during the night. The dropper will spit out a random item from its inventory when powered. It can be powered directly or by adjacent blocks. It's a solid redstone component, so it activates all other adjacent droppers next to it. It can also be used to move items from dropper to dropper like so, but it's slow and there's the hopper, so I'm not sure it's really used. The dispenser shares exactly the same mechanics as the dropper, but has more special features than it. For example, it can fire arrows, fire charges, and mob spawn eggs. It can also dispense and collect water, shear sheep, and even harvest honey. Note blocks will play a note when activated by an adjacent redstone component or adjacent powered blocks. The note block can't be powered from above because then it won't be able to play its note. You can change the note of the block by hitting it, and you can change the tone of the block by switching the block it's placed on. For example, if you switch it to gold, it has a ding or chime, and it's also a solid redstone component. Now it's on to the rails. The detector rail will strongly power the block underneath it to a signal strength of 15 when it detects, get it, detector rail, detect a card on top of it. It will power all adjacent redstone components even if they are above it, and is also the only rail that is movable by pistons. Activator rails can be activated, another one, through direct powering or through adjacent blocks. It can also do a lot of things, including ejecting mobs from minecarts, priming TAT minecarts, and disabling minecarts that don't pick up anything. Powered rails are powered like activator rails. Okay, I'm gonna stop. The power travels 8 blocks from the source, like so, and active powered rails will speed up minecarts to a speed of 8 blocks per second, which is the max speed of minecarts. And deactivated power rails will actually decelerate minecarts. Slime blocks stick to all adjacent blocks that are movable, but they do not stick to glazed terracotta even though they are movable. So therefore, you can use sticky pistons to pull glazed terracotta because sticky pistons are made sticky by slime blocks. Aside from that fun fact, do you know that minecarts with hoppers can pick up blocks which are above solid blocks? They can basically pick up items through solid blocks, which is very useful for automatic sorting and collection systems. There are still many more redstone tips, circuits, systems, and items that I couldn't add to this video, but for now, that is all for the video. I hope you now understand the fundamentals of redstone, and if you want to see more redstone explanatory videos like this, subscribe and comment what you want to see down below. Goodbye.